Apart from quarterback, the edge position is valued by most more than any other in the NFL. And although it may seem hyperbolic, I really think this could be one of the deepest edge classes of all time. If you are enjoying these position rankings, please consider liking and subscribing as it greatly supports the channel. Just before we get to the juicy part of the video, I've got day 3 evaluations on JT Tuimoloau, Shamar Stewart and Jared Ivey. But now we have 15 day 1 or day 2 evaluations to get through, starting with a couple of controversial ones. My number 15, Mike Green out of Marshall, is someone who has gained a ton of hype due to his production. His 17 sacks was the most in college football, so you can understand how he's gained some real traction. What I would say about his production is that he is facing lower competition. I watched a ton of film on this guy, and there is such a small percentage of the snaps where I saw him get pressure on the quarterback that looks anything like the way he needs to be able to win in the NFL. Whether it's a misalignment from the offensive line or just really poor protection, so many times I saw a real lack of resistance. And Mike Green gets off the line pretty well, so some of the lack of resistance he faces is due to his quickness, but it's not the level of quickness to where he's not going to face a whole new world of challenges in the league. His 32-inch arms are short for an edge rusher, and I just don't think he possesses the physical power, speed or bend that's going to make him a high-end pass rusher. The other big name that I'm pretty low on is my number 14, Mykel Williams. Now do bear in mind I've got him as a 3rd round pick, so I'm not saying he's going to be a disaster. I don't see the potential top 10 pick or even top 5 pick that I've seen projected. He's got good size, 34.5-inch arms, he's got pretty good power, and he plays for Georgia. Quite honestly, to me, after that it's almost like people didn't bother watching the film, they've just assumed he's a super high upside edge rusher. He played across the defensive line and provided his value by being too powerful for most of the college competition he faced, and even when he played as a pure edge rusher, he almost always wanted to get on the inside. The point I'm building up to is that he isn't going to win with pure power in the NFL. If the huge upside that everyone talks about is the idea that the average NFL tackle is just going to get completely crushed by this guy's power on every snap, I think that's completely unrealistic. I see Clelin Ferrell as a pretty good comparison for Williams, an effective run defender due to the power and the length. He provides versatility to play as a 3-tech in a 5 as well as a base end in a 4. But the major thing that I'm not seeing in terms of upside is that real twitch and bend that all the truly disruptive edge rushers require. Number 13 is Princely Umanmielen out of Ole Miss. This is kind of the opposite of Mykel Williams. Princely does have almost 34-inch arms, but his size and power is a concern, and even his twitch doesn't blow me away. But the draw with this guy is that I can see exactly how he's going to provide value. I think you stick him out wide where he doesn't have to truly engage with the offensive lineman. He can just win with what is his best trait, the flexibility and the bend he possesses to turn the corner and get to the quarterback. He also developed a nice spin move for if the blocker overcommits to stopping him winning with a pure speed rush. If he is used correctly, I could see Princely being the sort of solid starter that ends up with between 6 and 10 sacks every year. At 12, I've got Landon Jackson out of Arkansas, and this is a weird one because he's 6'6", but his 33-inch arms are just average for an edge rusher. His lanky frame doesn't excite me the way I think it does with some people. Edge rushers need to be able to get low because they don't want the offensive lineman to be able to get their hands into their chest. That makes it much easier to control the defender. And obviously at 6'6", that's more of a challenge. Plus, even with the 264 pounds that he carries, he has a frame where I worry about him being pushed around. And he's also not the twitchiest athlete. With this said, he's very polished in terms of hand-to-hand combat and his ability to disengage with blockers. Most importantly, he has that vital bend that I'm looking for. Once he has the leverage, there's no stopping him from getting pressure on the quarterback. He's a bit of a risk, but I think he'll be productive. But now things are getting serious as we move into the 11 prospects who I think should be drafted in the first 2 rounds. People are often misled by combine numbers, but with my number 11, Donovan Ezeiruaku out of Boston College, I would say his results are a very fair representation of what he is as a prospect. He didn't run a 40-yard dash, which makes sense as I found his speed to be underwhelming. At 6'2", he's very short for a defensive lineman, and at 248 pounds, his size and his power will probably look underwhelming in the NFL. But the fact that Ezeiruaku ran the fastest 3-cone drill and 20-yard shuttle speaks to by far his biggest strength. He's a very similar prospect to Landon Jackson, in that I think he'll be productive purely based on his ability to turn the corner and bend his way to the quarterback. An interesting element to the comparison between Jackson and Ezeiruaku is that at 6'2", Ezeiruaku has the advantage with 34-inch arms, compared to the 6'7" Landon Jackson, who has only 33-inch arms. I think Ezeiruaku is pretty scheme flexible and a safe pick for any team that needs a reliable pass rusher. The potential superstar in this edge class that everyone will look back and wonder why he wasn't spoken about is Karius Robinson out of Alabama. Initially thought of as a linebacker, Robinson has had very limited snaps in his 3-season college career, and even in those limited snaps, what he was asked to do was very sporadic. But although his skinny frame isn't ideal, I see huge upside as an outside linebacker in a 3-4 system. Just the glimpses I've seen of his twitch and flexibility should make GMs wince when they see another team draft this guy ahead of them. Not only does he have the upside of an elite pass rusher, but his ability to drop into coverage will excite defensive coordinators who put a particular emphasis on disguising the defensive play. Teams may be scared to draft Robinson, but when you see his physical traits, it's really not as much of a risk as it seems, as long as you have a clear idea on how to use him. The fact that my number 9, Jack Sawyer, measured in with just under 32-inch arms, is probably going to make him a real bargain for whatever team ends up picking him up. And not that having tiny arms as a pass rusher isn't a concern, but it doesn't mean all the good traits that Sawyer displays should be ignored. He's 6'4", 260 pounds, packs some real power in his hands, and I think the fact that he does have these short arms has meant that he's had to master the art of hand-to-hand combat. I found him to be very effective when it comes to disengaging with blockers, and although he's not the most explosive, he's got subtle bend and flexibility, which has led to him having the second most pressures last season of anyone in this video. He's a base end in a 4-3 system, and he's a safe pick. At 285 pounds, my number 8, Elijah Roberts out of SMU, will need to cut some weight and be a base end in a 4-3 system, or more likely he'll be drafted as more of a 3-tech in a defensive interior. Either way, I think he's dangerous. Playing for a slightly smaller school in SMU, he isn't gaining the traction that he deserves. But I think Roberts will be too quick for guards if he plays on the interior. He sets up his pass rushing maneuvers really nicely and could end up being a very productive pass rushing defensive tackle. Or if he does cut some weight and end up being used as an edge defender, his power and pass rushing nuance will make him fairly productive, but he'd also be one of the better run stuffing edge defenders. My number 7, Bradyn Swinson, may be a guy who goes under the radar simply due to the fact that there isn't one single trait that people can grab onto and get excited about. But I believe he's going to be productive. He's got good strength, he's got 33.5-inch arms, he's got some quickness, and he can really turn the corner and bend. Swinson pulls this all together with some nice pass rushing maneuvers that will make him an immediate success in the NFL. Nothing to overcomplicate here, just a really solid and safe prospect to draft in the second round. My number 6, Jordan Birch, has cut some weight to get down to 279 pounds, so it seems like he's looking to play off the edge, but just like my number 8, Elijah Roberts, whether he bulks up and plays on the interior or slims down and plays off the edge, his quickness to power ratio will make him a success. He's a guy who has a pass rushing plan before the ball is snapped, and although he's not the most explosive as an edge, I was surprised to see the flexibility he has to turn the corner and get to the quarterback, which, as you've probably realised, is a very important factor to me. I don't know why these bigger guys like Birch and Roberts are getting overlooked, but they both jump off the screen when I watch them, and I can't see them not being impactful. The last one before we get to the first rounders is Kyle Kennard out of South Carolina. This one is going to be like the Bradyn Swinson evaluation, where maybe there's not one trait that makes people really excited, but the reality is that this guy will be productive. He's got 34-inch arms, he's strong, he's lean, he can really turn the corner and bend. Kennard is nuanced in the sense that he usually has a plan on how he's going to defeat the blocker in front of him, which sounds obvious, but not all of those guys have that. A lot of guys are just running and trying to win with physical traits, but there's very little risk involved with Kyle Kennard. You are drafting a player who will probably never be a superstar, but I think will be an 8 to 10 sack type of guy. So we have a potentially historic amount of productive players in this edge class, but only 4 jump out to me as first round worthy prospects. At number 4, I have James Pearce out of Tennessee. His frame gives me some concern if you're looking to draft him in the top 15. 245 pounds spread across a 6'5" frame. It shows up on film as he does look very lean, and his arms are just under 33 inches. However, I don't actually think he lacks strength in his arms, and if you're a team that runs a 3-4 defense, you can stick him out wide and let him use his burst, his bend, and his pass rushing nuance to be just as productive as he was in college. My number 3, Nick Scourton out of Texas A&M, is just a big ball of power. The thump he has in his hands gives him the leverage on blockers to win in a variety of ways, one being just to use pure power and push tackles all the way back. But what gives offensive tackles nightmares is the way he can bend, because once you're on the back foot, he's able to completely manipulate your movement, and some blockers will be simply powerless to the damage he can create. Scourton is an effective pass rusher, but will also appeal to defenses that prioritize stopping the run. This is very much a base end in a 4-3 system. I don't think he has the upside of the 2 guys I have ahead of him, but Scourton's floor is as high as anyone in this class. And now we get to Scourton's teammate, Shamar Stewart at number 2. And right off the bat, we need to address the fact that he only had 2 sacks last season, because if you're a casual enjoyer of the game and your only hesitance is the lack of production, I get it, but I'm here to tell you that you should eliminate that from your mind. The college game especially is misleading when it comes to sacks, because a lot of it is screens, RPOs, slants, plays where it simply isn't possible to get to the quarterback in such a short amount of time. And when offenses saw that they were coming up against Nick Scourton and Shamar Stewart, the whole game plan would have been based around making sure that the quarterback isn't standing in the pocket for too long. It seems that people are associating risk with drafting Shamar Stewart. We seem to lose track of the fact that with some positions, physical gifts give you a floor as well as potential. Stewart looks like an enormous human being on the field. He's got long arms with serious power, and yet he looks like one of those unrealistic Madden characters you create, where despite being so big, he looks like one of the more flexible and explosive defensive linemen in this class. So what part of that do we not think translates to the NFL? It depends on which teams need a defensive lineman, which at some point before the draft I'll take a closer look at. But if my number 1 is off the board and you have a quarterback, I have no doubt that Shamar Stewart is worthy of a top 5 pick. Just an absolute machine. No surprises at number 1, I have Abdul Carter out of Penn State. And probably not a million miles ahead of Shamar Stewart, to be clear on how high I am on him. But I see Abdul Carter stepping into the league and immediately establishing himself as one of the premier pass rushers in the NFL. It's a different type of edge rusher to Shamar Stewart. I see this being more of a 3-4 system fit, because having only just converted to the edge position this season after coming into college as an off-ball linebacker, Carter does have the ability to drop into coverage, and if he goes to a 4-3 system, I still think he'll become an elite defender, but it may take a bit more time because he's still learning those pass rushing maneuvers that can really help to disengage with the blockers. Right now, he's winning with pure explosion and bend. He's also not the biggest, but the Titans and the Patriots both run systems that would mean leaving him out wide and letting him just shoot out of a cannon, and he's scary to watch if you're in the same division as the Titans or the Patriots. But that's my edge defender ranking. If you did enjoy, please consider liking and subscribing, as it would be appreciated more than you know. As I've said, this was a very deep class. Even guys like Josiah Stewart and Jared Ivey, who we didn't even speak about, I think could be productive if they land in the right spot. Someone like Mykel Williams, I'm definitely lower on than the consensus, but he's only at 14 because guys like Umanmielen, Landon Jackson and Donovan Ezeiruaku, they didn't even make my top 10, and yet I could easily see them having 8 sacks next season. And then between 13 and 5, it's fine margins. James Pearce and Nick Scourton, I think, are going to be even more productive. But Shamar Stewart and Abdul Carter, they're the ones who I could see being the elite edge defenders to come out of this class. I'm hoping to be back very soon with the interior defensive linemen, so keep an eye out for that. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.